Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips the balance in favor of fair use. Project Rescue Children exposed in latest in series of human trafficking hoaxes. What was I telling you guys about 10 years ago? Well, I didn't have this channel. I've been telling people about this for a long time. You guys got to read between the lines, too. You know, not like a good old tax write-off, isn't there? The group reportedly faked rescue stories, including one involving a baby saved from traffickers, and lied about where funds were going. By Elizabeth Nolan Brown, July 22nd, 2024. Project Rescue Children claims to have rescued hundreds of children around the world from human traffickers. You know, I don't know, but an intensive investigation by the BBC. I don't know, you guys. BBC, you guys know what's going on over there, right? Cast major doubts on this claim. I'm just going to take this one with a grain of salt because Jimmy Savile come to mind, you guys. Reporter Haley Mortimer found that multiple PRC stories, including one involving a baby saved from traffickers, appear to have been false and that several of the rescue centers it was supposedly fundraising for didn't exist. PRC called the BBC's allegations completely without merit, misleading, and defamatory. They always do the same thing, don't they? Deny, deny. But the BBC's story appears deeply reported, with Mortimer having physically traveled to alleged rescue centers in Kenya and the Gambia, only to discover they didn't exist. It's like a dry goods store in New York City, or anywhere else for as far as that goes. Anatomy of a scam. PRC was founded by a former police officer. I'm going to try to behave, you guys. Named Adam Whittington, a British and Australian citizen. After leaving the police force, Whittington set up a company that helped locate kids taken abroad by their parents during custody disputes. The group later shifted focus, and it now describes its mission as rescuing and protecting children from child trafficking and exploitation. I also want to know how they do that. Because, as we're seeing, I don't want to say names or anything, been talking about this for a long time. A lot of the people that are saying they're saving children are not. And also, a lot of them that say they're helping children are actually the ones hurting them. And a lot of times they bring them straight back to the place that they started. The group raised funds, sometimes with the help of celebrities. I don't mean to be sarcastic, you guys. I'm just in that mode. Such as British TV personality Sam Faiers, by telling supporters they were helping to save trafficked children and build rescue centers in Kenya, the Gambia, Uganda, and the Philippines. But less than half of the money recently raised for a rescue center in Uganda made it to group's partner organization there, the BBC reports. And it gets worse. Alleged rescue centers elsewhere didn't seem to exist at all. Mortimer and a BBC team traveled to the outskirts of Kenya's Kisumu to visit a PRC center, supposedly run by a woman known as Mama Jane. They found that Mama Jane was an elderly lady called Jane Gorey, who lived in the house with her husband. There were no kids there, rescued or otherwise. And Gorey had no idea PRC was using pictures of her house in fundraising efforts. I did find out that her son, Kupa Gorey, was PRC's director in Kenya, and he had brought Mr. Whittington to visit her home. Writes Mortimer, Whittington uses pictures of improvement work PRC has funded at Mrs. Gorey's house to convince donors he is running a rescue center. Nearby, the alleged rescue center Mortimer encountered a man whose 3 children have featured on the PRC website, described as orphaned, homeless, or victims of trafficking or exploitation. But none of this is true, reports Mortimer. The man told Mortimer he had received no money from PRC. In another case, Whittington had shared a photo of a baby he claimed had been saved from traffickers in a Gambian marketplace. All of this goes deep, you guys. I can't go all the way down the rabbit hole, but it goes very, very deep. So I'm just trying to decipher, is this a false story? I believe it seems legitimate to me. But you have to ask yourself, why would someone attack people trying to rescue children? But it seems very credible to me, in my opinion. Whittington had shared a photo of a baby he claimed had been saved from traffickers in a Gambian marketplace. Because, trafficking only happens like in other countries, right? The group launched a fundraising campaign to help bring the baby back to the UK and solicited people to sponsor her. He also recruited influencer Alex Betts, who had been hired to promote the group on social media, to adopt her. And Betts went to the Gambia to meet and take photos with a girl whom they called Maria. But when Betts raised concern about the non-disclosure agreement, here we go, you guys. Whittington wanted her to sign. PRC ended her contract and attacked her online, the BBC reports. In true narcissistic fashion, Betts discovered that the picture of the baby that PRC had shared had been posted by a maternity unit 2 years prior to the supposed rescue. The BBC has found no evidence that the marketplace rescue ever happened, but Miss Betts had met a baby, who was a child. In May 2024, we traveled to the Gambia. Our first stop was the location of PRC's supposed rescue center. But just as we had found in Kenya, it was not a rescue center and no rescued children had ever lived there. The man who owned the property told us it was just a family home. With the man's help, they found Maria in a nearby village. The child's arms were covered in sores caused by a bacterial skin infection, as her mother couldn't afford the medication she needed. The BBC reports. The child's mom said her baby was born there. When the baby was 3 months old, a representative of PRC said people wanted to sponsor the baby. So she had allowed him to take the child to meet Miss Betts. Mortimer writes she was amazed to hear the stories being told about her daughter online. She said she had never received any money, but had been given some groceries on a few occasions. Not the first time. This isn't the first we've heard of people using incredible but dubious rescue stories about trafficked children to raise funds. In the 1990s through the early 2010s, Somali Ma'am was working with celebrities like Susan Sarandon in getting glowingly profiled in the likes of the New York Times and Smithsonian. Through her nonprofits, AFESIP in Cambodia, the Somali MAM Foundation in the U.S., she claimed to be rescuing girls and women around the world from sex slavery. Hillary Clinton even toured AFESIP's headquarters in Cambodia. You guys know I can't say anything else, but you guys should know. Can't say too much. That just told me a lot. But anyways, I'm going to read the rest regardless. Then Newsweek's Simone Marks started digging into some of MAM's rescue stories they didn't check out. This kind of seems to me like a counter story. Anyone in the know will know. I can't go too deep. In 2009, Nicholas Kristof wrote in the New York Times about a girl named Long Pros, who had finally summoned the strength to tell her stunning story of sexual slavery. He reported that a woman had kidnapped Pros and sold her to a brothel, where she was beaten, tortured with electric wires, forced to endure 2 crude abortions, and had an eye gouged out with a piece of metal by an angry pimp. Pros, Kristof said, was rescued by MAM and became part of her valiant group of former trafficking victims fighting for a world free of sexual slavery. Pros also told her disturbing story on Oprah and appeared in the PBS documentary Half the Sky. Believe it or not, when I returned home, my mother and father didn't want me around. I wasn't considered a good person, she says in the documentary. It might have been that, like in some of these cultures, she's now ruined or something because she's no longer pure. Equally hard to believe is the fact that Pros's family, neighbors, and medical records all tell a different story. Amazing how they can research this stuff, you know what I mean? Dr. Poke Thorne says he performed surgery on Pros when she was 13. After her parents brought her to a hospital with a non-malignant tumor covering her right eye. Photographs in her medical records clearly show the young girl's eye before and after surgery. So how did she come to be one of Somali MAM's girls? The Sarah Bone, director of Cambodia's Takeo Eye Hospital back then, says his staff contacted AFESIP to see if they could admit Pros to one of their vocational training programs. Another of MAM's biggest stars was Mayas Rata, who as a teenager gave a chilling performance on French television in 1998, describing how she had been sold to a brothel and held against her will as a sex slave. Late last year, Ratha finally confessed that her story was fabricated and carefully rehearsed for the cameras under MAM's instruction, and only after she was chosen from a group of girls who had been put through an audition. She, like Pros, was never a victim of sex trafficking. She and a sister were sent to AFESIP in 1997 because her parents were unable to care for all 7 of their children. Around the same time Newsweek was exposing MAM's apparent deceptions, another high-profile sex trafficking story fell apart. Chong Kim's story of sex trafficking got widespread attention and was even made into a movie, Eden, that premiered at Sundance. You know that's controlled. But an investigation by the anti-trafficking nonprofit Breaking Out found no truth to her story. Something's weird about this, you guys. I'm going to read it, but it's not adding up to me. What it found was a lot of fraud, lies, and most horrifically capitalizing and making money on an issue where so many people are suffering from. More recently, the work of Tim Ballard in Operation Underground Railroad, a U.S. group that claims to rescue kids abroad, and that inspired last year's hit movie Sound of Freedom. I don't trust that movie as far as I can throw it. Was revealed by Vice to have been misleading people about its work. This is kind of sniffing like Controlled to me right now. How do we get here? The decision to conflate all prostitution with sex trafficking. Oh, you guys. I'm going to skip that little part. I don't want to read that. Something really weird about this article. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but I'll put the link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night, wherever you are. Peace.